a request. So the purpose of today's conversation is to deliberate the option of the March 2018 versus November 2016 referendum timeline, and Mr. Hardy is here to answer any questions you might have of him.
I just wanted to remind the audience, since you said that, because I've got a whole bunch of emails that said we were going to have a referendum vote in March of 16. We never were scheduled to have it in March of 16. The question is, do we do it in November of 16 or March of 18, which is when we would normally do it if the cycle held true.
Right. As a matter of history, since the year 2000, the board has had 5 millage referenda. The first one was in July of 2000, which failed. As a result of that failure, the board went out in March of 2002. There had been some criticism. There were probably a number of criticisms that led to that failure. One was that people didn't like the summer, so the board decided to pick the month that I think it felt like the most people were available, snowbirds, etc., and did March 2002. We've done every 4 years since then, so March 2006, March 2010, March 2014. The issue now that you all are talking about is whether you want to stay on that cycle and do March 2018 or do some other time, November 2016. That's certainly the board's decision. There's no law that requires any particular date. That's up to what the board decides. Mrs. White just asked me to get the information from you as far as if you chose one versus the other, what would your time frame be?
I have a question on the referendum we did for 2014 was through 2019, wasn't it? It was for the 15 to 19.
June 30, 2018.
Through 2018. If we were to have an election in 2016, that would be for 2019 to 2024?
It would be picking up, so it would be seamless from July 1, 2018 through June 30, 2022.
2022. And if by chance it would fail in 2016, I mean, wouldn't there be some expectation of those voters that it would go away, but it would still go on for 2 years, would it not, regardless?
The voters have approved a referendum through June 30, 2018. If you could hold the next election, either of the dates we're talking about or some other time, it would be made clear that it would be for a continuation of the referendum beginning July 1.
It would be your intention to make it clear.
Well, that's the ballot language would so state. And regardless of whether it succeeds or fails, the old referendum would continue. I would say that the statute says you can only hold such an election once every 12 months. So if there was a loss, you could come back 12 months and a year later. You couldn't come back the next month or in 6 months. So, but the referendum, whichever date you would do it, whether it was November 2016 or March 2018, would pick up at the conclusion of the preceding one. So it would start in July 1, 2018.
But going to Shirley's point, I mean, it's not unprecedented. I mean, the county renewed their penny sales tax at special referendum twice, I might add, well before the first penny expired. They renewed it for the
right. There's no prohibition from doing it that way.
And I don't think the community found that particularly confusing.
So what I was asked to do was to say what are the timelines, and you all are very familiar with the March timeline, and this is, you can do it a little bit sooner, but traditionally the board would do its resolution in the October time frame, preceding March, October or November. That would go to the Board of County Commission, because what you are doing is, according to the statute, directing the Board of County Commission to place something on the ballot. So your resolution directing the County Commission goes October or early November. The Board of County Commission, obviously we would have conversation with them, they wouldn't be surprised by this. They would have their resolution in November or December, and that gives the supervisor of election sufficient time to create the ballot, and that's how we've done it the last several times. If we wanted to move to a November timeframe, I spoke with Mrs. Dent, asking her, since this was different for me at least, to prepare, what would the time frame be? And she said she would need, working backwards, she would need by August 15th of 2016, whatever was going to go on the ballot. So again, working backwards, the Board of County Commission would need to do their resolution in July, meaning the school board would need a June resolution. So it's about, month 1, school board, month 2, county commission, and then send it to the supervisor. So if you're looking at November 2016, you're looking at June, school board, July, county commission, transmitted to the supervisor in August for the election in November. If you're looking at the March 2018, you'd be looking at a school board, October, November 2017, BCC, November, December 2017, going to the supervisor for the March 2018 ballot. So those are your time frames.
Bridget?
Well, I think I've already stated my opinion on this, and actually, Art, thank you, because I think some of the things that you brought up help. When I have heard just in generalities some of the opposition about changing it to a general versus a special, I think, this election has been 5 times really, but 4 times now approved. So I believe the community is knowledgeable, aware of it. If we have the potential now, working off the advisory committee and showcasing the value of this referendum dollars, because it's a very valuable part of their position, moving forward and putting it from an election on a general election and the savings that it could have, and it passing, it's a win-win. Also giving us extra time to determine what we want to do with that money, as opposed to it seems that it's a bit of a rush as the way it is done now. Second, based on statute, if for any reason it did not pass, we would still be able to hold another election trying to go back and showcase our need for that referendum dollars. So for me, the voter turnout, the potential, the definite savings, it's a no-brainer in my opinion. So and because 2016 is quickly around the corner, I'm glad we're discussing it now, so that if we do decide, we can take a vote on it and decide where we go, so that we can plan ahead on the campaign to alert the community as to the general election 2016 for the referendum.
Jay?
Are you supporting the referendum either way?
I am.
Okay, good to know. I really think some people are confused by the memo that went out yesterday as to which year we're talking about. I think there could have been some confusion, at least in some of the answers that I got, because it said March, didn't say March 2016, but it said March versus November. But, I've been heavily involved in the referendum, the actual doing of the campaign, and working on raising the money for 4 times. And I know that we'd have to raise more money next year if we run a campaign to get the attention of the voter. I know there are a lot of other things that are on the ballot and likely some local issues that might crowd it. And we have 2 board members who are running for re-election and/or a new seat that's open. And we have 2 years away, and we're also looking at a choice of a superintendent. I still feel the best place for it is to leave it as it was. It was intended to be done at a time when we'd have a dialogue with the community, when we'd be able to have that dialogue front and center without a lot of other uproar and other things getting the attention of the community. With the change now from early voting, which was really the hot thing to do in the early days, to absentee ballots, a lot of people have the opportunity very easily of voting. And I'm hoping that by the the next time that we do this, that more people will be using absentee ballots because it is so very convenient. But we're looking at $300,000 versus $160 million. The payback is really very, very good for our community. I'm hoping that it passes. And I think that, I'm certainly going to do whatever anybody chooses to do or how we end up voting. But for me, I would rather see it stay as a special election in March of 2018.
I don't see that there'd be a problem in it passing if we did it in November. What I see the problem is that asking people to, or even asking us to project out where we're going to be in 6 years, or even what the legislature will allow us to do. By having it in March, I think it focuses the attention on the school board and how those dollars are used. So the district knows there is a dialogue held. I mean, I'm already getting fatigued for the November 2016 election. I mean, I've already heard way more than I want to hear from some of these candidates that are running and that are going to be on that ballot. And people, I believe, are just going to shut down. And I think the information we give voters about how we use this referendum is so important to the community that I think spending, and it's not, the district spends some money to put it out there, but there's other organizations that are out there that are pushing is it Committee for Better Schools, or telling what the community, how we use those dollars. I think that is a good use of our dollars to let the community know how we're doing, how we're spending those dollars. And by holding it out separately, rather than getting it lost up in what's happening on the November 2016 election, because I'm telling you, I'm already focusing out of that one. I mean, it's like, I don't want to hear anymore. And I just don't think it makes sense to be doing it when it isn't even up yet. I don't know that we need to do it. Although I don't think we'd have any problem if we did it in November 20. I think it would pass. The community supports our schools.
Caroline?
Well, I agree with you, Shirley. I think it would pass too. But the question for me is, it's going to be at the end of the ballot. So you're going to have all of the candidates that are running for election. Then you're going to have all of the other ballot initiatives that are on the ballot for 2016. I think the sheriff has something on there, and I can't remember all of the questions, all of the special elections that are on that 2016 ballot.
I think it's unknown exactly at this time. There's certainly talk of a couple of Florida constitutional amendments. I believe there's at least the anticipation of one county, and that may be the sheriff one you're talking about, because I asked that question of Mrs. Dent what she knew, and of course she wasn't sure at this point. So I think there's likely to be some ballot initiative, but whether it's 1 or 2 or 5, I can't tell at this point.
So therefore, I think that the school referendum would get lost. Absolutely lost. And it's not that we would lose it, but it would get lost. People wouldn't go down that far to vote. That's what I'm afraid of.
There is an undervoting on amendments that, somewhere can be somewhere between 15 and 20% of undervotes on those amendments, because people vote for president sometimes and don't vote for anything else. But I just think it would get lost in the campaign. That's what I'm worried about, is raising money and having to raise double the amount of money we normally have to raise when we're a single issue, and having to raise the money in the community for the campaign and getting our message out. Because, there's a turnover of probably 30% in residents. 15% a year is what the supervisor estimates in voter turnover in this county. People come and go. And some die, but unfortunately, but there's about a 15% turnover a year in voter rolls. So how would we get our message out? We went to every school. We went to, did probably 125 different speaking engagements. We're not going to be able to do that probably as easily with all these other candidates speaking to those organizations. So the campaign will be much more difficult. So that's primarily why I believe it's better to leave it as it is.
And now to finish, I would say that March, it stands alone. You either vote it up or you vote it down. And there you have absentee ballots that you can use. They're readily accessible. That's how I vote now, from absentee ballots. And if you look at the number of people that are here in March and you look at the ones that are here in November, I believe there are more people here in March than there are in November. So that's why I'm in favor of leaving it as is. Why would you want to change something that's a winning ratio? Why would you want to change that? Especially since I'm student focused and I know what this money means to our school district. I know what it means to the education of our children. I know the programs that we'd have to cut if this wouldn't pass. I wouldn't want to take that chance. Can't see why. If you're going to vote for it, you'll vote in March or you'll vote in November. If you're not, you'll vote in March or you'll vote in November. I
just have two comments. First one is on the email that we all got yesterday, and it's one of the reasons that I've said a long time ago that I'm not running again. I am so aggravated over this politicizing of every single thing that comes along, not to mention it wasn't accurate. So that's the first thing I wanted to say. Second part of it is I disagree with what you're saying about the timing. There's a reason we have it in March and not on November. It's because the same reason the county has a sales tax renewal and an extension of the renewal, because Election 101 will tell you if you want something to pass, you put it on a special referendum, have a special vote for it. Because more people will vote yes than will come out and vote no on a single item, and I don't think any of you honestly would argue with me that that isn't correct. So if we really want to know what the public thinks, I think we ought to have it on a general election. Caroline, there may be more people here in March than there are in November, but I doubt there's more registered voters here in March than in November. I think the registered voters are the people that are full-time residents, and I think they're here in March and they're here in November. But I disagree with having it in March. I've always disagreed with having it in March. I understand why we have it in March, and obviously the majority of the board is going to decide why we have it in March. But I just think the truth needs to be out there as why we have it in March. Now, there is part of the argument that since we had it in March going out initially, sooner or later we've had to do what we're trying to, or at least talking about, contemplating doing it now, where we could never wait 4 years and then have it in a November election because we'd miss a school year worth of referendum dollars. But so there is some truth to the fact that we've had it in March because that's when the 4 years renewed, and we didn't have a November election previous to that. But I tell you, the reason you have a special election is because you want something to pass. Bridget.
So I pulled up some statistics, and I think this is very important. And just kind of in recapping on what I heard, it sounds like a majority of you believe it would still even pass in November. And to me, $80 is a lot of money, but $300,000 is a lot of money. It's a lot of money. I don't care. And these are tax dollars. And to me, it's baffling that if I hear from people here that they say they still think it'll pass, but we would still put it on a March election. I don't get that. Second, I agree with Mr. Kovach is that the voter turnout last 2014 was 15.63% in the 2014 March referendum. And in 2006, I have 25%. But in general elections I have the Sarasota Soil Water Group, that was 42.5%. I have a constitutional amendment, which was a bottom of the ballot, 54.45% voted on that. And a county charter amendment in 2006, 53% voted on that. So I think, again, this is what I get a bit frustrated about, because I see the good that happens in this district, and I know all of you do too. And when we get criticized, it's sometimes frustrating because some people may not know or see it all. But if we know why it's on a March election, because we believe we just know it's going to pass, but yet it's been successful for us year after year since 2002 But yeah, we have the opportunity to put it on a general election, save $300,000, and most of us believe it'll still pass. I don't understand why we would even contemplate not doing this.
Shirley?
How much would it cost?
I get frustrated too when people don't understand what it takes involved when you're working on passing a referendum when they've never done it. I know those of us who are talking about leaving it in where it is have all put in hours working, telling the community about the referendum, what the referendum does for us. And it's a lot harder. I've been there in a November election too. It's a lot harder to get people's attention in November, to tell them. That's the point I'm saying, that in March, it gets our story out. People are listening in March. But it frustrates me to say, well, I don't understand. No, you don't understand, because you've never been there. You've never been at the table helping us pass a referendum.
Caroline?
I forgot what I was going to say.
Anybody else? Thank you so much for coming, Art. Appreciate it.
What are the next steps?
Well, I heard 3 votes for leaving it where it is, I believe.
Even though we don't formally vote in workshops. I know.
Well, there's no vote. I mean, you all have had a discussion. The next step would be for the board to pass a resolution, whenever the board's going to pass a resolution, to direct the county commission to put it on the ballot. And when that would happen depends on when you want the election to be, obviously.
Could you tell me what the cost, this is what I was going to ask. What is I mean, we can't put it on the ballot in November for nothing. There must be a cost to that, too.
There's nothing.
There's no cost.
I'm sorry. Unless we tell the supervisor elections at a later date for any reason and it goes to a second ballot, then we would be in charge of paying for that extra paper. But from a cost standpoint, all precincts are already prior set up, so there's zero cost.
So the only cost would be in raising the funding to get the message out regarding the referendum.
And you're wanting to know what the next issue would be. I mean, if
I thought we were going to have our school board attorney answer that question.
Well, I mean, I think what triggers the election is the board passing a resolution directing the Board of County Commission to put it on the ballot. So, I mean, that can be done at any time. I mean, I wouldn't think you would today pass a resolution saying that it goes on either in November 16 or March 18. I mean, it would be closer to the run-up. So I don't know that there's any action that needs to be, there's certainly nothing that needs to be done today to accomplish any of this.
And I didn't sense a will of the board to do anything different. I said vote. The will of the board, there is no will of the board to do anything different. So I don't know where.
Yeah, I would put this out there as a discussion, and it can always come back. But you know, based on what you all have said, it sounds like there's a majority of the board that wants to do March 2018. If that's the case, then you go with the timeline that I suggested earlier with the October 2017 resolution. If at some point that changes and a majority of the board wants to do it at a different time, then you have to kind of back up from when you want the election to do your resolution to get it to the BCC so that they can do theirs. But, I mean, regardless of which of the two options you would have coalesced around today, there really isn't a formal action that needs to be taken, you know, until next summer at the earliest, even if you went with the November 2016.
Okay. Thank you, Art.